Did you already know someone at Antler, or did they just see your LinkedIn post and they reached out and said, "Hey, you're available. Why don't you come and work with us?"
I had no clue who Antler was. No one knew anything, anything about Antler. No one knew anything about me. They just reached out. Prerna from Antler, who headed recruitment at that time, actually just reached out to me and connected me with the co-founders. And from there, it was just literally a week before the lockdown, national lockdown here happened.
Okay. And a little bit of context for people who are watching that haven't heard about Antler. It's a Singapore-based VC firm, and they have locations around the world. So it's teams like you and your co-founder Nitin who sort of start a local sort of fund focusing on that ecosystem.
So
Right?
a little bit of context on Antler. Of course, Antler was started by the gentleman called Magnus, who happens to be the batchmate of Mark Zuckerberg and Eduardo Saverin. And Eduardo Saverin became one of the investors into Antler because of that. And Magnus, having been a consultant, having had a phenomenal background, he actually ran a global fashion group company. And having seen the scale of doing something global, but doing something global a bit decentralized, I think he sort of got onto the best of that company as well as the best of McKinsey and decided to build this globally decentralized venture capital firm. And Magnus' vision was to really democratize entrepreneurship to help very smart people become great founders and help in that journey from day zero, right? So that was the start and the genesis of Antler. Because Magnus was based out of Singapore, he started this in Singapore.
And this was in 2018,
This
right?
was around 2018, 2017, late 2018, literally out of paper plan alone. And then he got his co-founders, Vegard and Fritjof, and UC, who heads Singapore, and Dylan. And a bunch of these folks he got together. And Bede, who headed Australia. All of these folks had been operators. All of these folks had built companies. And I think what he saw, which was two very different things, right? One, he said he's going to go after people and really go after very smart people in all of these different countries where entrepreneurship has really not taken off. And the seed of that thought is to say, developed countries, the only way countries are going to move forward is if startups and founders really change that ecosystem, right? So he wanted to build the first truly global VC ecosystem in the whole world, right? Of course, there are VCs who are global, but the scale at which Antler operates today, there is not one single platform, one single VC, one single company that has so many different countries, right? We are in 25 different cities. So that was, I think, a phenomenal thing. And the second part he said was, we will do this decentralized. And decentralized is extremely important because you want to get the smartest person in that country and let them run that country the way they feel because of their knowledge, right? And I think that was a super exciting thing for both me and Nitin. The last thing is to say that I will start this journey with you even before you become a founder. I think that's the other thing, right? Most VCs usually start with people after they are clear of which idea, after they're clear of which space, and once they become a founder. Antler's whole mission is to say, we will help you. We will actually help in this journey of being from employee to entrepreneur and help you at that stage. So I think these are the 2-3 things that he did really differently, and really well. And at the stage at which I came on board Antler, it was a 2-year-old company with hardly any data, hardly any capital raised, hardly any success stories. So it felt like being part of a global startup, right? And I think that was a huge part for me and Nitin to actually come on board to say that, hey, this is something that we can build together. This is not something that you're joining after 10 years, 20 years, where something is set. So a lot of the decentralization helped. A lot of being very, very early stage, even as Antler, as the organization, helped.
Yeah, definitely. And I think even you've described Antler India as a startup in and of itself, right? Within the larger startup of Antler Global, which would have made it much more attractive for you, I think, and Nitin, as opposed to some of the other offers that you had been getting from VC firms saying, hey, why don't you join us as a partner or as an employee? And you're like, you guys have been around for a while. I'm just going to be like a cog in that machine, right? Whereas Antler, you kind of get to build it yourself from scratch with the autonomy that they give you guys.
Absolutely. I think this sort of married those 3 things, right? Which is, 1, I wanted to have a founder journey again, right? 2, I wanted to work with people and trustworthy people and just build something which involved people, right? And the best part of an early stage VC is, or a platform, is that you involve people and founders, right? 3rd is I've never done something global. And for me, this decade or this part of the journey, I felt I wanted to do something global. Of course, in Cognizant and Infosys and Yahoo had a lot of global exposure, and but just that it was all still emerging markets or India. right? And the delivery of it was India. Same with Urban Ladder, right? While we had global ambitions, it never sort of fully fructified. So I would say that this was the sort of the triad that came together. And I think, over the course of the conversations with Antler and with Nitin during those 6-9 months, it just made it clearer and clearer that I think the combination of the three of us could be extremely interesting to start an institution in India.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, you just mentioned Nitin there, and I wanted to know, was it you who was already in touch with Nitin, or Antler was kind of said to you, Rajiv, hey, we've already been in touch with Nitin, why don't you guys team up? Like, what was the story there? How did you guys all, the three of you co-founders, right, Antler being one of them, how did that story evolve?
So funnily, the single biggest product that Antler today in the globe is famous for is this thing called the residency, which in India we started last year. And the purpose of the residency is to help you find your own co-founder, right? And that's what Antler did with me and Nitin, right? So Antler had actually already started talking to Nitin, and they really like Nitin, they really like me. And Nitin was doing his first principle, so he needed some more time to actually come on board. So the three of us started talking together around June after, when I came officially on board. And during those 6 months, it just became super clear that the combination of the three of us with three very distinct skills, which is the platform, and me and Nitin started talking in a way that it would have been me and Nitin to start up something, right? Even if Antler was not on board. But the good part is, I think the three of us bring such unique, distinct value that it just made sense for us to team up to bring that global platform, which is what, and since Nitin had also talked to a lot of the Antler folks and I had also talked, we really loved the team and the culture and the mission. And it just made sense to build Antler together in India in a way that India has its own unique characteristics, but at the same time, I think it would contribute back to the global Antler, and we could take on global roles over the next 5-10 years. I think that was sort of the set of conversations we had between, I would say, June 2020 and December 2020. And officially, with Nitin coming on board, post his first principles experiences, we launched Antler in India in 2021 January.
Okay, 2021 January. That word launch, there's so much to it that is happening behind the scenes. So I'd love for you to walk me through, especially given that you guys are starting this thing from scratch, obviously under the sort of leadership and guidance of Antler Global, but I'm really curious to know what is involved in starting a VC firm from scratch? Like, obviously the first thing is capital. You need capital to deploy, right? Is that the thing that you start with, like going out to LPs and sort of raising money for your fund? Or is it reaching out to early stage founders? Like what's the process there?
So one of my, frameworks, which I have now realized after many years of both building as well as building a VC firm, is founders have exactly 5 tasks that their time gets spread on. It could be you, it could be me, it could be some new founder. The first one is everything around capital. If there's no capital, you can't build institutions, right? Second is everything around customers. Whoever is your customer, for us, the customer is the founder. For furniture, the customer is the end customer. For SaaS, the customer is an enterprise. So you need to be on top of what customers want. Otherwise, you are building, just complete crap. Third is around team. If you don't have a team that can, be built culturally the same way that you would want to build an institution, you can never build big institutions, right? Fourth is just ability to build product and ability to take it to market. So product and market is the thing, right? Because at the end of the day, it could be a service offering, it could be a VC firm, it could be a tech product. At the end of the day, you have to build something and take it to market. The fifth is just networking the ecosystem and ability to spread this in the ecosystem, right? Because if other people don't say good things about you, you're toast, right? So every single founder spends his or her time across these 5 aspects. Now, sometimes 1 spike, sometimes 2 spikes. Even in a week, even after you launch a particular company, it's always across these 5 aspects, right? So when someone asks me, in a regular week, it's 20% across all of these 5 heads. It's very simple. So at the start, we went about the process exactly like how you would launch an MVP of anything, right? We talked to customers. We did the largest survey possible. Because of our own social networks, we just put it out on LinkedIn and Twitter in November 2020, right? What do early stage founders really want? Is it capital? Is it co-founders? Is it technology help? Is it go-to-market help? Is it ideation? What is it that founders really want? We were lucky that it got picked up and 1,200 founders responded. 1,200 founders. I don't think there's been any survey that's done with so many founders in this whole country, right? We also obviously had the power of our networks and we established the first 2-3 team members very early, right? So there was Kathy, who was working with Nitin, who was her founder herself. There was Nandini, who was my first hire at Urban Ladder, who had done a YC startup, who was in between, right after the startup had to be shut down post-COVID. So we had Kathy, we had Nandini, and we got Rahul on board. So the team of the five of us went about strategizing, went about talking to customers, hundreds of founders, did this research, had to raise capital from scratch, right? And the capital story is also interesting. It was our first believer was Vijay Shekhar Sharma from Paytm, and it was a 9-minute phone call that I did, and he was like, "Yeah, this just makes sense for India as an ecosystem." And he's someone who has very strong conviction on something, so he came on as the first investor. And the way Antler is set up is 75% of the capital is raised like you are a founder, right? It is locally raised, right? So I would say that it is actually absolutely no different from starting a startup. I remembered my first 18 months at Urban Ladder. It was exactly as exciting, as ambiguous, as MVP thinking, as just all the excitement and the adrenaline of the first 18 months of Urban Ladder. Antler, very similar, right? So this is sort of all the stuff that we did in those 6 months to get our first investors on board, get the first team members on board, literally get the first space on board. Shraddha of Your Story is a very good friend. So I had the first launch interview, Shraddha of Your Story, and she said, "Hey, why don't you just work out of here? Because it's just one or two of you." So first office space.
It was in Indiranagar.
Yeah, it was in Indiranagar, the Your Story office. And really, I think, the first 6 months pre-launch is all the adrenaline excitement, right? All the disagreements, we should start with this, we should start with that. But I think over those 6 months, I think, got strong conviction on where at least we would get started. The funny part is over the next 9 months, we figured out the market moved so much that we had to sort of completely rehash the product. The product has been rehashed quite distinctively over the last 2 years. But I would say the first 6 months were a lot of excitement to just get this started.